Those words landed like a slap. Not the kind that leaves a mark on your skin, just the kind that makes everything inside you freeze with humiliation. Not a raised voice, not a reason, just the sentence delivered at 9:07 a.m. with the same tone a motor D might use to cancel a dinner reservation. Trena, you're no longer with us. I stared at the Zoom window. 3 faces. Daria from HR, reciting a pre-written statement. Ethan Holden's assistant fidgeting behind his camera, and Holden himself, reclining in his leather chair. Faint smile playing on his lips, as though he'd just dealt me a hand. I never even knew I was playing. My face remained still. My jaw rigid. In 6 years, I had been known as Trena Holly, the mind behind Voltric Dynamics vSphere protocoler, carefully engineered. $880 million secure communications network for defense contractors and aerospace firms. I created the encryption framework, the handshake modules, the biometric gatekeeping code. My work was invisible, but its impact was undeniable. I did not speak. I did not plead. I simply listened as Daria outlined the return of company property, upcoming paperwork, and final pay details. No mention of the core system that still bore my signature. No acknowledgement of the countless nights I spent refining each line of code. Then Holden leaned forward, voice softened to a whisper that barely registered beyond my own eardrums. She won't even see this coming. My eyes didn't blink. At precisely 9:07 a.m., I tapped the edge of my watch. 14 minutes. Then, I closed the laptop. The coffee in the kitchen was still hot, its steam curling upward in oblivious spirals. I reached for the mug without tasting it, the ceramic warm between my fingers, and carried it back to the living room, where my second laptop awaited. This one was mine entirely, never touched by corporate VPNs or monitored by IT. I set the mug beside it, paused as the screen glowed to life, and opened Orion. Orion was more than a tool, it was my safeguard. Born out of past betrayals, constructed line by line after I was blindsided at a previous job. It lay dormant until a precise set of conditions were met. Revocation of my user permissions. Detection of a non-biometric override, key, and an unauthorized login on the backup node. All 3, favorite targets of corporate overreach. All 3, fulfilled the moment Holden pulled the rug from under me. The interface flickered, then steadied. Unauthorized termination detected. Orion protocol initiated. A countdown appeared at the bottom corner, 12 minutes and counting. I exhaled slowly. The system was doing exactly what I had designed it to do, protect its creator. When faced with silent erasure, but I needed confirmation. I clicked into the access logs. The trigger didn't start at 9:07 a.m., it had been primed at 2:17 a.m. In the depths of pre-dawn, someone had logged into the redundant node using the fake backup key I'd provided to Ethan weeks ago. They'd assumed it granted full administrative rights. Instead, it tripped Orion's fuse, and the evidence pointed to Holden's laptop, his device, fingerprint unmistakably matched. I tapped my notebook, the real one with cloth-bound covers and graphite scrawls, flipping to the tab labeled T3, Loyalty Test 3. There, in neat hand, I'd outlined exactly this scenario. A contingency plan that no one would see coming, embedded deep within the code. The countdown ticked. 10 minutes 43 seconds. I took a measured sip of coffee, finally tasting the bitterness that paralleled my quiet resolve. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just the solemn knowledge that architecture like justice works best when invisible until it ISN single quotes. Holden thought he'd outplayed me. He thought he could erase my role, muddy my contributions, and present my work as his own. He never understood the foundation of vSphere because it lived in the silence between server calls and packet headers. He excelled at boardroom theatrics. I excelled at crafting systems that don't rely on applause. I closed the logs and returned to Orion's dashboard. The dashboard faded to dark before relighting with a single line, awaiting biometric reauthorization. And below, in unassuming caps, creator signature required. Orion had already sealed off outbound communications and quarantined the core servers. 6 minutes. 28 seconds. I reached for my notebook again, pen poised. Not out of necessity, but ritual. In that quiet act, my thoughts collected themselves. Time, triggers, IP signatures. Documentation not for them but for the record because people like Holden rewrite history the moment it suits them. 5 minutes. 2 seconds. The first flicker of panic had already rippled through Brantix's corridors. I pictured the third-floor engineer launching from his chair, coffee splattering onto cables. The CTO Zachary, frozen before the system terminal. Holden, bursting into the server room, suit jacket flapping, demanding to know what had gone wrong. They'd fumble for the override Keitha, very decoy the first handed them, and watch Orion reject it with a sterile message. Simulated admin override detected. Decoy activated. Then the final countdown. 4 minutes 17 seconds. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration, an assertion that you cannot dismantle a system without confronting its architect. When the timer hit 0, Orion would lock everything irrevocably. No workarounds, no backdoors, only me, and my terms. I slipped the mug from the counter and drank deeply, savoring the cold that mirrored the calm in my veins. A part of me regretted nothing. My silence had been unwavering. My strategy intentional. Years of subtle erasures, my name removed from slides. My seat at client calls, quietly reassigned, had taught me to listen, record, and build. 3 minutes, 5 seconds. I stood, pacing the room slowly, each step a heartbeat in time with Orion's internal clock. My mind drifted to earlier tests, minor code audits where I'd planted quiet alerts, email threads where I'd hidden headers, all prelude to this momentous symphony of code and contract, executed in perfect harmony. 2 minutes 12 seconds, my phone buzzed. An unexpected email from our largest investor. I ignored it, trusting Orion to sound the alarm. They would scramble to contain the breach, but they were the ones who set the trap. This was their doing. 1 minute 29 seconds. I returned to the laptop and watched the Orion logo pulse. My legacy, my safeguard, my retribution delivered without a word. They would call it a security flaw, a system error, but deep down, they would know. This was architecture demanding to be acknowledged. 30 seconds. I closed my eyes, recalling my mother's words stitched into a frame on my desk. Speak last, but act first. I inhaled the quiet tension, then exhaled into stillness. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The countdown clicked to 0. The screen blinked out, replaced by a final line. System sealed. Creator signature required. And then, silence. The silence hung heavy for a heartbeat. And then the phone on my desk erupted with pings, urgent messages from Brantix's CIO, a flood of texts from Holden's assistant, a call from legal counsel marked high priority. I let them stack, untouched. The system had spoken. Outside, traffic hummed along the avenue as though nothing had happened. But inside every data center, every regional node, Orion's lockdown had cleaved the network like a scalpel. No cheers, no alarms, just an unspoken truth. You cannot sever the architect from her creation without consequence. My watch read 9:21 a.m., exactly 14 minutes since Holden erased my access. A small smile flickered across my lips. 14 minutes of silence, 14 minutes of inevitability. They had ignited the fuse, I simply let it burn. I reached for my notebook and made a final entry under the heading post trigger. 9:21. 00 Orion Protocol Complete. Administrative access irrevocably revoked. All redundant and backup servers quarantined. Outbound communications sealed. Creator signature locked. Record delivered to personal archive. Turning back to the laptop, I scanned the inbox. Dozens of unread flagged messages. The first was from Zachary, the CTO. Subject: Emergency Brantix network incident. The body was raw panic. We've lost control of core systems. We need you. Please call. I didn't reply. Next was from our legal team, 3 pages of analysis, citing the termination clause buried in my original contract. They'd finally discovered Clause 97. Subsection 4. Termination without 30-day notice voids all derivative claims to software authored by the employee. Their commentary, legally enforceable. Orion remains your intellectual property. I allowed myself a nod of quiet satisfaction. A third notification glowed. An automated alert from our largest aerospace client. Holden Marks requesting emergency status update on vSphere. All channels unresponsive. Please advise. I clicked open the draft reply I had prepared earlier that morning. Please refer all inquiries to Ms. Holly. Unauthorized personnel. Cannot bypass security protocols. I hit send. Behind me, the city's rhythm continued oblivious, muffled by my closed window. I poured a fresh cup of coffee, this one hot, and cradled the mug in both hands. The warmth grounded me. 2 weeks ago, I never imagined I'd be here, orchestrating the fate of a multi-billion-dollar network from my small kitchen table. But every line of code, every hidden alert, every margin note had led to this moment. I rose and walked to the window. Office towers thrust into the sky. Vehicles wove ribbons of light down the street. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Holden must have been on his knees before a sea of monitors, pounding the desk, demanding solutions that didn't exist. I pictured him pale, voice trembling, facing a board of directors who'd just realized the woman they fired hadn't just designed their flagship product, she still owned it. My phone buzzed again, this time from Lyall Braun, a senior board member. Trena, would you consider stepping in as interim CTO? The board has convened an emergency session. Your counsel is indispensable. I stared at the message. Lyall's respect had been a quiet undercurrent all these months, but now it surged like a tide. I typed back simply, on my terms. Within minutes, the reply, understood. Please join the secure board channel at 10 a.m. I glanced at my watch. 9:34 a.m. 26 minutes until my first board meeting as their new technical leader. Already, I could feel the shift from the periphery to the center, from silenced to sovereign. The inbox chimed again, my lawyer, confirming that the legal embargo on Orion's source code had been filed with the district court. The documents were public record now, time-stamped, notarized. Anyone attempting to reverse engineer or override the system would face contempt charges. The power dynamic had irrevocably changed. I allowed myself a small exhale. This wasn't hubris, it was justice. Every corporation I'd ever worked for had tried to capitalize on my work and discard me. This time, I'd built the safeguard from day one. Architecture in code, clauses in contract, backups in notebooks. I'd armored myself against erasure. My morning coffee had gone cold, but I didn't rush to drink it. Cold coffee, after all, had its own clarity, the way it sharpened focus rather than lulled the senses. I sipped, standing, notebook in hand, letting the gravity of what had transpired settle in my bones. At 9:45 a.m., a secured video link came alive. 30 board directors, legal counsel, senior engineers. At the center tile, a placeholder avatar read Ms. Holly, incoming CTO. I stepped forward to click join. A hush fell. Eyes flicked from screens to cameras. Holden's tile blinked then vanished, replaced by the label temporary offline. Some director cleared her throat. Ms. Holly, thank you for joining on such short notice. As you know, this morning Brantex faced an unprecedented system failure. Our network is paralyzed. We need your guidance. I straightened, setting the notebook on the table. My fingers traced the cover one last time, cloth-bound resilience. Then I met the camera's gaze. I'm here, I said, voice calm. Let's start by restoring order. Parts of the group nodded tentatively. Charts and status reports materialized on the shared screen. Server loads, quarantine logs, external partner alerts. I reviewed them, noting the cascading lockouts and the frozen API gateways. All expected. All by design. First, I continued, we need to confirm that no one else can bypass Orion's biometric requirements. Security policy has changed. Create a temporary liaison channel where I can authenticate and re-establish minimal access. The rest of the network remains offline until we verify every node's integrity. A flurry of acknowledgements followed. I assigned tasks. Legal would draft a press release emphasizing unauthorized tampering, rather than admitting corporate missteps. Engineering would provision a secure quadrant for my re-entry. Communications would notify clients that network downtime was due to external security breach. As I spoke, confidence settled into the room. The previously frozen CTO, Zachary, looked up from his notes and met my gaze. No envy, no lingering resentment, just relief. He mouthed, "Thank you." At 9:57 a.m., 10 minutes before the scheduled board meeting, I concluded, this event was entirely avoidable. Let it be a lesson. A system without its architect is a house with no foundation. I plan to overhaul our protocols to ensure every engineer retains personal safeguard clauses. No more silencing the minds we depend on. Silence, then unanimous agreement. I logged off the board channel, turned to my own screen, and initiated Orion's creator flag. A prompt asked for a biometric scan, retinal code, and voice signature. I executed the handshake, and within seconds, the quarantine barriers lifted. Nodes began to flicker back online, one region at a time. Data streams resumed. Clients across continents logged back in, murmuring status confirmations. Back in the kitchen, I placed the empty mug in the sink. The clock read 10:07 a.m. 1 hour since my termination. In 60 minutes, I'd been fired, counterfired, and rehired. Not by begging, not by argument, but by design. My phone buzzed with a final message from Holden. It simply read, "I underestimated you." I deleted it without opening. I opened my notebook to the blank page after T3, Loyalty Test 3, and wrote in bold, "Final Act, Restoration and Reform." Beneath it, I sketched an outline for the new Orion policy: personal lockouts, transparent contribution logs, mandated favor clauses for vulnerable creators. I labeled it T4, Collective Safeguard. Looking out the window, sunlight streaked across the pavement. The city moved on, racers and walkers alike, unconscious of the seismic shift in digital architecture that had just occurred. But I knew, for every system built, there is an architect. And every true architect demands that her voice, her code, cannot be silenced without consequence. I zipped the notebook closed, slid it into my bag, and stepped away from the laptop. My day was just beginning. I zipped the notebook closed and slid it into my satchel, then stood up from the kitchen table, straightening the collar of my shirt as if preparing for a ceremony. Not one of triumph, but of responsibility. The roar of Orion's system snapping back to life still echoed faintly in my mind, a reminder that code, when written, obeys its creator alone. A soft chime announced a meeting reminder. Board strategy session, 10:30 a.m. I glanced at the clock's 10:12 a.m. aloud, myself a moment to breathe. The city beyond the window carried on in its usual Tuesday rhythm. Deliveries. Morning joggers, a newspaper stand owner sweeping his stoop. None of it remarkable, yet all of it underpinned by networks and systems that people relied on without understanding. That would change. I picked up my bag, pausing to look at the framed embroidery on the counter. My mother's words. Speak last, act first. I smiled. Today, I had lived those words. Tomorrow, I would ensure others never had to wait years to secure their own agency. I joined the secure board channel 15 minutes early. Greeted by a skeleton crew of senior directors and our legal lead. Liel Braun appeared on screen, his composure restored, but eyes bright with the morning's revelations. "Good morning," I said, voice steady. "We've contained the incident. Orion is back online under my authorization, and the network integrity is intact. Now, we need to transform this vulnerability into strength." Liel inclined his head. "Agreed. What's our first step?" I set my bag aside, opened my notebook to the new section I'd labeled T4, Collective Safeguard, and began outlining our path forward.